Hello, we are here today with...
Jimmy Doran.
And you work in the...
Well, I'm a member of the Dublin Council of Trade Unions Executive. I'm on the National Executive of Connect Trade Union. I work in Dublin Bus, but I'm speaking on a private capacity, or personal capacity.
And you are a member of Connect, yes?
Yes, that's right.
Yes. What would you say are the main issues facing the trade union movement at the moment?
Well, density is the main thing. A few years ago we had 60% of workers were members of trade unions. Today it's hovering around 25%, which is very low.
Yeah.
The 1990 Industrial Relations Act, as part of social partnership, was brought in a number of years ago, which totally restricts the ability of trade unions to decide what actions to take themselves. There's a whole lot of legal procedures they have to go through if they want to take strike action or industrial action of any form, and you can only take industrial action for what they call a trade dispute. So in other words, something like the Dunnes Stores strike of 1984 would now be illegal.
Yes.
Or support action from one group of workers to another is illegal.
Yes.
Any form of political strikes are illegal. So
solidarity strikes are all illegal.
Totally illegal, yeah. So that totally restricts the trade union. Like solidarity is the rust-proof weapon of our class.
Yes.
That's all we have. To stand together, united, the workers united will never be defeated and all that. But that means nothing now because we can't do it.
Yes.
We can't unite,
And would you say that abolishing or heavily reforming the Industrial Relations Act is something that is a necessary measure at the moment?
Well, it's actually ICTU policy. It was passed in the ICTU BDC, which is the policy deciding Congress of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions in 2021 to replace all rights lost to workers under the 1990 Act, and nothing happened. So in 2020, what year are we now? 2024 last year in the BDC in Belfast, the Dublin Trades Council put in another motion on the 1990 Act. Why has it not been progressed? Why has the legislation not been drafted? And instructed the ICTU executive to enact the required legislation to replace all those rights lost by workers because of the 1990 Act. So we are putting pressure on them to do so, but as it stands, the 1990 Act is there.
Yes. Outside of parliamentary and governmental channels, what measures do you think trade unions could take to fight against the Industrial Relations Act?
Well, all we can do is educate people, because there's an awful lot of people, don't even realise that it exists.
Yes.
People think, you can go and strike, but you can't.
Yes.
You have to fulfil all the rules and regulations to it. It's like years ago, if you went in on a Monday morning and we say a shop steward had been victimised, you down tools and you walked out the gates and you were on strike. It was as simple as that, and that softened the cough of employers very quickly, and they would sort out the problem very quickly. But now, particularly with an individual situation that's only one person, it could take maybe 18 months to have it resolved through the WRC and Labour Court and all of that. And by that time, the person involved will have got another job, his workmates will have forgotten about him. So, it's pointless. Some people think, and are putting this about, that, we could organise support strikes and have strikes in several companies at once. I work in CIE, which is a group of 4 companies, and for those 4 companies who are under an umbrella company, like sort of thing, to, time a trade dispute at the same time is next to impossible. So to get, we say, workers in Dunnes Stores and Tesco's and Irish Rail and the civil service to go on strike at the same time over a similar issue that you could have a lot of people out on strike is cuckoo land. And people are going around saying that you could do that. Absolute cuckoo land. And also, because people are, can you afford to live is the slogan here today, and people can't afford to live. They can't afford to pay their rent. Wages are so low, people can't afford to go on strike either. So even if you have a situation where you can't go on strike, people are reluctant to go out on all-out strike. They'll go for one day or a half a day or whatever. You go out all out, your mortgage goes into arrears, your rent isn't paid, and you're evicted.
Yes.
And this is the way the system is designed by the capitalist class, for the capitalist class, to keep workers down and control workers. And the key class element of trade union is the 1990 Industrial Act, which controls the working class, and it's the capitalist class controlling the working class, and that's what has to be stopped.
Yes. You have been involved with the trade union movement for a long time, correct?
Well, I'm a shop steward since 1993.
Yes.
Were you born then?
Unfortunately, no. Over your many years of experience, what would you say were things the trade union movement did correctly, and what were the mistakes it has made?
Well, the big mistake they made was getting involved in social partnership.
Yes,
because that weakened the whole trade union movement. It got them sitting around, got them cosy, it stopped disputes, and the crowning glory of that was in 1990, the Industrial Relations Act. Got things right. The Right to Water campaign was a very good campaign. It was backed by 5 trade unions. Without those trade unions, some people would disagree, but I believe that without those trade unions and the money that was put into it, because like that stage over there is pretty small, it's pretty, you can barely hear what they're saying, but the amplification and stages and PA systems that were paid for by trade unions during the Right to Water campaign were as good as you'd get down at Slane Castle in a rock concert, and people could hear what was being said. So that money invested there paid off. But unfortunately, the mistake we made in that campaign was coming off the streets and letting it go into the Dáil, because once it goes into Parliament, it's lost in there in committees, the swamp.
You would prioritise extra parliamentary means, yes?
Say again?
You would prioritise extra parliamentary means.
Extra parliamentary is absolutely out on the street. In that campaign, and again it got us all by surprise, the numbers that came out for it. But the second largest demonstration, the big ones, was Christmas week outside Dáil there in December 2014.
Yes.
And there was well over 100,000 people there. And the mistake we made was we went home.
Yes.
We packed up when the speeches were over and when the bands were finished playing, we packed up and went home. We should have stayed there.
Yes.
We should have stayed there. It was Christmas week. They would have come in. They would have capitulated. There was 100,000 people, ordinary working class people. These weren't agitators or anything like this. This was the ordinary people. They tightened the screw too much on the working class, and there was no money left in the kitty to pay £800 water charges, and that was what it was going to cost.
Yes. Would you say that the replacement of the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael government would help this, or not much?
It has the potential to help a bit, but not a lot.
Yes.
Not a lot, because unfortunately, I don't think there's any one left-wing party, parties that describe themselves as left-wing, that is strong enough to take power in Ireland without being in a coalition. And once you have coalitions, things are watered down. And also, the capitalist class, who are the real power, behind governments. They're the ones who fund governments. If you have a Sinn Féin-led government with other left-wing political parties, the capitalist class, they will go on strike. And they will stop investment. They will close down factories to put pressure on the government.
Yes.
That's what they do. People think you're voting for TDs and they run the country. No, big business runs the country.
Yes.
The capitalist class, simple as that.
Yeah. So, to finish up, you would recommend more agitation, education on the Industrial Relations Act, and extra parliamentary measures so that we do not repeat the mistakes of Labour, yes?
Absolutely.
That'll be all. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Victory to the workers.
Cheers. Thank you.